When I was 12, I had my square little, tiny little pad on the slight angle, right? But my dad was killed and I was pulled out of school for a bit. Even before that, I was actually thrown out of the music class because she thought I was horsing around trying to sing, and I honestly was trying to sing.
All right, I am really excited about my guest today. It is one of my students, and I would call him a friend at this point, Mr. George. And George, where are you coming to us from?
Alfred, Maine.
Out of Maine. Well, I wanted to talk to George about kind of his journey with drumming, because he's doing a ton of stuff. He's playing out in groups. He plays in a brass band, which I know and is near and dear to my heart because I was in New Orleans for 3-4 years gigging. And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
Just turned 74 on February 9th.
74. And now have drums always been a part of your life, or are they a more recent thing?
More recent.
So when you started, was drumming something that you always wanted to do? Because some people would say, that's a crazy thing in your mid 60s to late 60s to pick up something new. But you've been successful in multiple areas of your life, right? I mean, walk me through some of the things that you've been involved with in your life, just as because you're kind of a journeyman.
I back up about when you asked how I got at the drums or any part of my life. When I was 12, I wanted to become in the junior high school marching, so I picked up sticks and I had my square little, tiny little pad on the slight angle, right? But my dad was killed and I was pulled out of school for a bit. And then I was shipped off to my sister's house to get me out of the city for the summer. We bought my grandson a drum set, a pearl form drum set when he was 13. And he was playing it. It looked like he was interested, and all of a sudden it stopped. So I kept trying to encourage him to bring the drum set up, teach me how to play. And my reason behind that was to encourage him to play. I think if he taught me, he would play more. Well, when his mom got married, my daughter got married, they moved to Hawaii, the drum set got left behind. So a neighbor came up and started showing me some foundation. It was typical. There was a lot of drinking beer, trying to figure out how to play. And he just really pushed. It was a lot of fun, and his style in playing and where I wanted to go were different. He was, and I don't mean this to be negative, but he was like, was it Monster on the
Animal on the
Animal?
Yeah.
He played like Animal. He was a hardcore. He had this massive set, and I just wanted to play. I was somehow started to be drawn more to a jazz.
Well, and so the reason your story is interesting to me is because there's so many people that, you're living the dream that some people want, right? And it's always hard to look at our lives like that, but you're out gigging, you're in your mid 70s, and no one would think that a person that had your background and had success in these other areas would all of a sudden in their mid late 60s go, you know what? Drums, and I'm going to do that successfully. And so you play on a brass band, you've started going to jams, you're like, there's people that pick these up and then they never really go anywhere with it because they just don't have, but you have a clear definite purpose and where you want to go with it. You're very enthused with it, and so it's very interesting to me to dig into that. So when drums came in, if you could look back, let's say mid 50s, and you could tell your mid 50s self, hey George, whenever you get to your 70s, you're going to be gigging out on the drums. You're going to be in a brass band. You're going to be marching in parades. And you've been like, okay, sure. It goes to Christmas Future or something like that. You're a liar, right?
Yeah.
Would you have, when you were in your mid-50s, would you have imagined that you would be doing this? Was that like in the plan for you?
No. And I'm a very goal-oriented person. So when I wanted to get out and set up my business, I had my 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year plan. And once I started playing drums, I found out I was able to feel the music the way I did when I was younger. And if I can back up slightly, I had a motorcycle accident in 1979, and I turned my left foot completely backwards. So it's hardware fused. My right toe's been crushed, it's fused. Not from the same motorcycle accident, this is just life in general. But when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was serious going out to dancers. Even as a teenager, the Beatles, all those, and then right through disco, right through country western when I lived in Montana. So the desire to move to the music was there, but I could never listen to music while I worked because I was dealing with animals. So my release was going out to clubs and whatever and dancing. And so when I started playing the drum, I realized that I feel like I'm dancing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dancing again, you know, and struggling even on the 3 and to be able to get that kick on the and, you know, to be able to get my body to move synchronized again was a really challenge, and I loved every second of the struggle of it.
So you started with a buddy and maybe a couple beers trying to figure out this Pearl Forum drum set and what to do, you know, and so kind of walk me forward. Then your wife winds up buying you a drum set, correct? Best wife ever, by the way. And so she gets you a drum set and kind of pushes you into that. So what happens from there? Because I know one of the first things you were involved in was in a brass band. You play, is it bass drum or snare drum?
Snare drum.
Snare drum in a brass band. For all those of you that don't know, brass bands are very popular in the New Orleans area, and then anywhere that the Mississippi River went, I've run into brass bands. I was talking to George. I had a gig with a band I was on tour with, and I was in Kansas City, and a brass band was playing next door, and I'm like, is that a sousaphone that I hear? And I went over and I had a great time for an hour before we played listening to this brass band. But anywhere the Mississippi River went and its tributaries, you had boats going up there and carrying this music. And so it's not unusual for it to wind up somewhere like Maine. But you're in Maine doing these brass bands and you join it. And so how did you even think maybe I'll be a part of something like that?
We have a drum shop up here called Drum Center Portsmouth. It's an awesome facility.
If you have not been to Drum Center Portsmouth, you need to go. It's an amazing store.
And they bring in people occasionally, like hosts, maybe from DW or Yamaha. And I met David Garibaldi. You get a chance to chat with him a little bit. And amazing, friendly person. And I reached out to him later and asked him if he could guide me directions towards a jazz player instructor. And he did. He introduced me to a friend of his of 22 years who took me on. It was so bad. I met him. We had one session together, maybe 2 sessions, and COVID hit. And everything else after that was Zoom. And I remember him telling me, giving me stick control book. And this will take me to the brass band. He gave me a stick control book. And he said, I want you to play this at 40 beats a minute. I said, okay. So I see you next week. He goes, no, you're going to need a couple of weeks. I go, no, I can get this. I called him back the next week and said, holy crap. Start playing 40 beats a minute. And so he took me on and we did Zoom, and I was so self-conscious being on Zoom, maybe. I couldn't play in front of him. But he was such an amazing individual. I miss him. He stopped playing, teaching when his dad became ill. And we would chat for about an hour and then play for an hour. He never once looked at his watch. And he took me in and he showed me, then he sent me videos and stuff. And then from there, I went into an ensemble. After we stopped, I went into the Conservatory of Music in Portland, and they had a jazz ensemble. So I jumped on. I couldn't even play in front of Peter, and yet I'd say, get in there with these guys, and all of a sudden it became comfortable. It became fun, and I started playing brushes. And I remember Peter telling me, he said, no matter what's going on, he says, when you're playing the brushes, I want you to play, the way I used to play is I would play with so much passion that I expected the women would start taking off their clothes. Some used to be ridiculous.
That's funny, when you think of, because we don't often think about, I was just watching Jojo Mayer yesterday, and I was pointing out he dances when he plays. He's dancing with the music. And Raymond Weber, when I was in New Orleans, Raymond played with Harry Connick Jr.'s Star Turtle and She album, and I believe he did some work with Dave Matthews and his solo stuff and several others, but very big name in New Orleans. You can hear him on Dumpster Funk now. But I remember him talking and saying, when I'm playing Brick House, I'm thinking about a big, fine woman walking down the street. That was the first time where I'm like, you're doing what? As if like that vision. And now I remember the first time I played Girl from Ipanema with someone that was from that region and understood bossa nova and stuff, and she started singing the song, and I said, oh, wow, this is a really sexy song. I got to play sexy. Well, how do you play sexy, you know? How do you play as if you're trying to induce feelings upon whoever's listening? But that's the magic of music, and that's what it does. So you're starting out, and then COVID hits, and so what happened? I'm guessing at some point you're finding things online. You're kind of trying to find other avenues.
Yeah, I tried a couple. I found your YouTube, and that helped a lot. Linear thinking, zones, stuff like this. That helped a lot, and that actually encouraged me to get more creative in my stretching to get around the thing. I came up with something. I actually taught Peter it one day, and he did a gig, and he got called on to do a solo, and he actually did the thing I taught him that I use as an exercise. So I had trouble finding instructors because my thinking process was different. They kept wanting me to go right into fills, or they were just doing certain things. One guy had surgery in both of his arms from drumming, and he says, no, you have to do it this way. And just the fact that when somebody says you have to do it only this way, it's wrong. I know it's wrong.
That's one of the things as a teacher that I try to look at. I try to look at every student that comes in as an individual. And online, that's even tougher because it's like you don't know them as well. But you try to look at the things that they're in. One of the first questions I ask them is, what kind of music are you into? What's lighting that fire that makes you want to drum? Because if you want to play jazz music, and I say, no, George, we're playing rock and roll. You're doing nothing but rock and roll. And it's like, well, wait a second. That's not what I want to do. Great. If you want to play jazz, fine. Let's start there. And people say, oh, jazz is hard. Jazz is a complex music form, but at its basic form, it's the blues. And the blues are simplicity embodied. And so we can start on a very simple place and say, okay, just play quarter notes on the ride cymbal. Just keep time. If you can do that, there's been so many gigs where that's what I do with, I'm playing quarter notes and just keeping time. And so I think it's very important that you pointed out, like, if you're starting out the drums, whatever that thing is that got you into drumming, made you passionate about it, that's what we got to follow. I was in a lesson with a student of mine, and he was bummed. He said, I said, look, if you could do whatever you wanted to do with drums, what would you be doing? He said, you know what? I'd be playing in my buddy's country band. I said, are you doing that? He said, no. I said, are you playing country music at all? He said, no, I'm playing this song. I said, then stop everything. We're going to play country music. Because that's what lights your fire, right? So I think it's really important that you continue to follow where you wanted to go. And I've been able to see George stretch out from that as well, because you are in fact actually now playing some country music. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And if I'd have told you 3 years ago, George, you're going to be playing some country music, would you have been like, okay, Stephen, that sounds...
No.
And that's one of the things I love, that George has embraced this. He's jumped into a brass band. He got the opportunity. He's like, let's do it, He came here. He played jazz. He went and played... Wait, you went overseas with your wife, and you wound up at a jam in what country?
I was in Holland, at the Netherlands in Amsterdam.
So he just goes to a jam in Holland and says, you know what? I'm going to jump in.
I played a blues song. I thought I was familiar with, but I never played 6/8 before. And the guitarists were just absolutely amazing to help me I said, you get me started, stop playing the song. I'll figure it out. And they worked with me, and it was such a blast that a bunch of the other musicians were playing. They came over to my wife and I and started buying us drinks. But I want you to know that your inspiration came from when I get comfortable playing in the jazz. I went to see Trombone Shorty live. And then the very next day, unbelievable. What a performance. If you ever get a chance to see this guy perform, you got to do it. And the next day, I saw this ad for Ideal Maine, Social Aid and Sanctuary Band. So I went and checked it out. Just a snare, walked in, didn't know soul. I played the foundation that I started learning, and then the other drummer kept going and moved me for about 6 weeks. Our first gig was on the first Friday of March. He never showed up. I'm sink or swim. Live performance of the year. First performance of the year with this band, and for the band for that year. And I got going. And then you and I contacted you, and you said that you told me about being down in Louisiana and that encouraged me. I took your that class you did on second line music, and it's most amazing thing. Learning how just to play just a snare, get all that sound out of one piece of equipment instead of the full kit. I had to teach myself again to use the whole setup again, but the encouragement that I got from you, the community when I came down to your camp. And met everybody down there and felt so relaxed. You know, we all walked in the first time you walk in your studio, it's like, whoa. Then it's, but from there, you talk so much about getting out to play with other people. And I tell you, if I was ever give anybody, anybody ask me what, any recommendations, it would be get out and play any chance you can, because there is no better feel than playing with other musicians.
And that's one of the hardest things that I have, and I push, so George has been in my online drum school for a couple of years now. He, like he said, he came to a camp, and you can find out that information on the website. They may be sold out by now. I think we had a couple spots, but and he's on the weekly calls that we do with everybody, and he hears me constantly tell them, you got to get out and play with other musicians. I don't think you have to be some kind of rock star. Just get your neighbor to come over with their guitar, with their bass, with their keyboard. Just jam with someone. Go out to a local place where there's a musician's hang and just play with other people. Go to a drum circle. Like whatever you can do to play with other musicians. This is an art form, and it's a language, and it's meant to be shared with other people. There's a great book called Musicking, and it's all about the concept. A professor wrote this I think it was a professor, he wrote around this concept of musicking, and that the act of making music involves everything. It involves the people that built the room that you're playing in, because that room gives a certain vibe. It involved the people that cleaned the venue, the people that are serving the food, the musicians, the stagehands. All of that goes into your experience because when we remember a great concert, we don't always remember the music. We remember the sights, the sounds, the smells, the people we were with, the laughs. That's what we remember, the feeling that it gave us. And people are trying to become something else whenever they pick up the drums. They're trying to become a drummer. And I get that question all the time. When can I call myself a drummer? I said, well, as soon as you pick up the sticks, just do things that drummers do. Drummers play the drums. Drummers listen to a lot of music. Drummers talk to other drummers. Drummers play with musicians. Like they read about, music. Do the things that a musician does. And that's what has impressed me about you is every opportunity you just say yes. You're like, yeah, okay, I'll jump into it. And George contacted me a couple weeks ago, and he had a bad experience at a jam. He got up there and it didn't go well, and things didn't go as swimmingly as he thought. And we kind of talked through that. I said, yeah, that's gonna happen. It's it's happened to me a million times. And so it's kind of all about that journey, the ups and downs. If you could give advice to people, George, that are wanting to do, like, let's say, and I know it's hard to picture that, but let's say that someone's looking at you going, that's my dream. That's what I want to do, except I want to play in my church band, or I want to play in my buddy's band at the retirement community, or I want to play in my buddy's garage band, or my friend has a band that gigs out multiple times in the month, or my high school friend is starting, a band and I want to be a part. What advice would you give them when it comes to things that have helped you learn the drums and pick up the drums and, go towards the opportunities that you see?
Enjoy yourself. Just feel the music more than I can only speak from how I feel it inside. I feel the music, and I'm able to, and the passion I get from being with other musicians and being part of something. I guess I'm stuttering because I was thinking about Saturday. We were in Boston and we were at a distillery, and I get to meet all these different people as we're taking this tour, drinking all these different whiskeys. And I met a young man who's plays the piano. And I asked him, do you ever get out? And he says, no, I don't think I could. So I told him, I said, listen, the best you can do if you really want to, he said, I want to get back into jazz. I'm playing concert music right now. I really want to get back into jazz. I go, let's go hang out. someplace and listen. I said, one of the things that's helped me was when I was first starting is I was struggling, but when I just focused, just played the groove, just stayed in the pocket. Don't worry about all this other magic. Sometimes I move away from my kit just to get away from all the bling, all the symbols. And my wife would come down with cocktails, dancing when I was in the groove. And when I said this to this guy, he looks at his girlfriend or his wife, I don't know who she was, he says, "You need to do that. That's what I need." And so after we got talking, he's starting to tell me about this jazz club that does jazz jams over by Berkeley. It's called Wally's. And I didn't know that my wife's in back of me telling him, "We're going there." She's taking me there right after we have supper. She's taking me over to Wally's. So as we go over the bit, I met a guy with a saxophone who played sax. He says, "But I haven't played. My key thing broke. I just haven't really." And I just said, "Get it fixed." He said, "But I'm so busy." He goes, "What a way to relax. What a way to get away from whatever you're doing now. And when you get home, to be able to get into yourself, listen to the music, enjoy the feel that you're going to get from it." And that's all I can say. That's worked with me because apparently, if I back up briefly, when I was working at the zoo, I was told that I whistled and hummed too much. So I was working with gorillas and orangutans, and my former boss kept telling me, "You're singing, you're whistling, you're too much." So apparently the music was always with me. I just couldn't hear it.
I just couldn't hear it.
Outside source, you know. So my suggestion to anybody, if you really want to do it, is just do it. Yeah. Just have fun. So
yeah,
what?
and never limit yourself. You know, I loved talking to you when you came here, and when people come for the camp, we have lunch every day and we have dinners, and it's more time to just hang out and get to know people. And what impressed me about George was just all these life experiences he had and all these, you collect stories as you go. And it's just impressive to me when somebody reaches mid-60s, late 60s, where they're like, "Oh no, yeah, I'm going to start this new thing." Because most people are going, "No, I think I've established what I do and I do that." And it's like, no, you can learn a new thing when you're 68. And in 10 years, because look, I plan on living a while. People are like, "Well, I don't have much time." I'm like, why are we talking about that? Why are we talking about the day that you're going to expire? Let's talk about the day that you're going to live. Let's talk about what you're going to do with that time that you have left. Because I could leave today and I could be gone. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I could get in a car accident and just be gone. We never know. We never know. And so to me, I'm going, you don't know if you have 20 more years or if you have 30 more years or if you have 5. And so the best time to start it was yesterday. The next best time is right now, and start pursuing those things you want to do. And the great thing about starting at the age that you started at is how you function. You know what your passions are. You know what makes you tick. You know how you learn. And so you can jump in and use those tools that you've used in your work life and your personal life to get you to the point of where you want to go a lot quicker.
I make one comment before we have to go in about age. My wife has a saying that you can walk outside and get hit by a potato chip truck.
Yeah. And I love that she makes it a potato chip truck because
I don't know why. But the point is I just shared this on Facebook because it really dawned on me that the reality is I don't know how long I've got. And so I'm going to count, I could die anytime. So every morning I wake up, I'm grabbing the morning and I'm going for it. And I'm just going to enjoy every challenge that I can possibly comes my way and has the opportunity to do it. And it's a way I've tried to live now for a long time. And I got to tell you, Stephen, at 74, I have more energy now since I've been playing music for the past 6 years than I did when I was 15. I thought I was pretty energetic when I was 50.
I'm glad to hear that because I hit 40 and I thought, man, I think I'm just starting to figure some stuff out.
Yeah.
It felt like I'm just figuring some things out now. I think it's going to be okay in the next few years, It really felt like 40 years was prepping for, oh, wow, now I just feel like I've, kind of like you said, I have more energy and I've actually, I know more than I did when I was 20, right?
Absolutely. So I tell people when you're 40 years, you're going into your best time of your life as far as I'm concerned. 40 years old and on for the next 10 years, you know what you've got, like you said, where and you're putting it all together.
Yeah.
And I think you're in your prime right now in many, many ways.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I know you're busy and you got a lot going on and you got sheep and a farm and, avoiding potato chip trucks that are coming by your house,
Yeah.
not getting hit. So, I thank you. And you're an inspiration to me, to be able to see all that you're doing and getting to do and not afraid to do. It really is inspiring to me as a player as well. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you for making this an awesome community.
Oh, you bet, man. Well, we'll talk soon. There's a call later today and there's one next week. And so I'm sure we'll be talking here in the next few days.
Okay. You take care of yourself.
You too, George. Thanks.
Yeah.